Hey everyone, it's Miss Divine. I'm here to read a story for you guys. It's called Who Was Amelia Earhart? And this is by Kate Boehm Jerome. I don't own this book or the rights to it, but I figured I'd read it to my students. Okay. Chapter 1. Who was Amelia Earhart? Here's a picture of her in front of her pilot. Amelia Earhart was a pioneer. This doesn't mean she traveled west in a covered wagon or lived in a log cabin. It means that she had a special spirit. She liked to be the first to do new things. In the 1920s, Amelia became a pilot. This was in the time when the airplane was still a new invention. Not many people knew how to fly one. It was even more unusual for women to fly planes. But Amelia set many flying records to prove that she was the best. Amelia helped start the airline business in the United States. She was also a writer, a speaker, and a fashion designer, but it all started with her love from flying. Amelia was a pioneer in another way, too. She thought that women deserved to have the same rights as men. This was at a time when women were still fighting for the right to vote. And that was 100 years ago. Women started voting in America in 1920. Also, here's a picture of Amelia with her plane, and here's a picture of people fighting for the right to vote, women fighting for the right to vote. They were called suffragettes. Many people still thought women were not strong enough or smart enough to have jobs outside the house. We know that's not true. But Amelia's actions proved that bravery and brains were not for males only. Unfortunately, Amelia did not live to see old age. Just before her 40th birthday, she tried to set a new record. She wanted to be the first woman to fly all the way around the world. But Amelia and her plane went down somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, and she was never seen again. Most people remember Amelia Earhart for the last event of her life. But this is a story about everything that came first. So there's a picture of her plane, and now we're going to go to Chapter 1, Young Amelia. Amelia Mary Earhart was born on her grandmother's house in Atchison, Kansas on July 24, 1897. The house was high on a hill. It had 11 rooms. Maids and cooks worked there. Dinner was served on fine china, which is like fancy dishes. Do you guys think that she was poor or rich? I'm guessing she was rich. Amelia's mother's parents had a lot of money. But Amelia's father had trouble keeping a job. Edward Earhart could barely make the payments on his family house in Kansas City. There were always money worries, but Amelia loved her parents, especially her handsome and funny father. When Amelia was 7, her father had enough money to take the family to see the World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri. All right, I'm stopping right there. Here's a picture of Amelia and her family. There's her mom and dad and her as a baby. And then this is a picture of a map, right? So there is Kansas, and there's Atchison, which is near Kansas City. St. Louis, where the World's Fair was right there in Missouri. 24 million people came to the 1904 World's Fair. 45 countries set up exhibits. Here is a picture. We'll go back to this, but there's a picture of the World's Fair. It was a big fair, kind of like the Big E from earlier this year, but much bigger. The whole, like thousands of people came. It's for the whole world instead of for New England. At the St. Louis Fair, there were Eskimo villages and Japanese gardens. Each nation and state showed something about its own culture. Amelia and her younger sister, Muriel, saw a big roller coaster at the fair. So there's a picture of the roller coaster and the rest of the fair. When they got back to Kansas City, Amelia tried to build one in her backyard. Muriel, Amelia's uncle, and another friend helped. Wooden tracks ran from the top of a shed to the yard below. A little buggy rolled down the tracks, and the tracks were greased with fat or oil to make the buggy go faster. Always the bravest kid on the block, Amelia was the first to try out the roller coaster. She dragged the buggy up to the top of the tracks and got on. Her sister held her feet. When Amelia gave the signal, Muriel let go. Amelia went down head first and crashed. Did this stop Amelia? Not at all. Here's her going down the makeshift roller coaster. Pretty cool. Did this stop Amelia? Not at all. She and her friends made the slope of the tracks a little less steep. She got on the buggy again, and this time she made a good run. She loved speed, and it was as if she was flying through air. On a cold day in December, Amelia went sledding with her sister. Amelia wanted to go very fast. She took a running start. Then she jumped on the sled, lying headfirst on her stomach, and the hill was icy. Amelia was gaining speed. Suddenly there was trouble below. A horse-drawn wagon came out from a side street. It was directly in Amelia's path, and Amelia couldn't stop. At last second, Amelia ducked. She and her sled slid right underneath the horse. A moment later, Amelia was up and smiling. Her quick thinking had helped her avoid a bad accident. So here's a picture of Amelia sliding underneath the horse. In the summer before 8th grade, Amelia went to the state fair, the Iowa State Fair, which is kind of like, again, the Big E, but a different size. Here, Amelia saw her first airplane. So there's a picture of the state fair, and there's the airplane. It's like an old school one. Planes were still really new then, so they're a very big deal. It was 1909, only 6 years after Wilbur and Orville Wright made their first famous flight at Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. Surprisingly, Amelia did not think too much of the airplane. She was always adventurous, but her love of flying came much later. Amelia's teenage years were hard. Her father couldn't keep a job, and the family split up. Amelia's mother took the girls to Chicago. They lived in a rooming house, and Amelia went to Clyde Park High School. Amelia was a good student. She dreamed of going to a first-rate college, but there wasn't enough money. However, Amelia's mother was able to send her to a good private school for girls. It was time for Amelia to start out on her own. All right, so we read chapter 1. I'm going to give you guys a little more information about the World's Fair. So we're going back to 1904 when Amelia was a little kid in Missouri. And this is the big fair, so there's thousands of people coming to visit all the different places around the world that are at the World's Fair. World's Fairs have been popular events throughout the history of the United States. In 1876, the Centennial Exposition was held in Philadelphia and marked a 100th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. 10 years in the making, this World's Fair introduced people to many new things. One of the most popular exhibits showed a new machine called the typewriter. Typewriters are basically like what we do on Google Docs. They type out words, obviously. In 1893, a fair called the World Columbian Exposition was held in Chicago. It was a grand event. One area in this fair was called the Midway Plaisance. The Midway featured popular entertainment. Here, the first Ferris wheel was introduced. It stood 260 feet tall and had 36 cars. It could hold more than 2,000 people when full. Building the World of Tomorrow was the motto of the World's Fair held in New York City in 1939. The popular exhibit at this fair was the Futurama, not the cartoon, just that's what it was called. Visitors sat in moving chairs to get a glimpse of the city in the future. Modern buildings and huge highway system wowed people of all ages. Another exhibit also got a lot of attention. Here, new people stared at a new invention called the television. Many wondered what good it might be in the future. So World's Fair showed off new inventions and fancy architecture or buildings. All right, there was also another little aside about the different new things, the new inventions that were at the state fair that Amelia went to, and it's called. This was the first plane, and Orville and Wilbur Wright, these guys over here, they were the ones who invented and flew the first plane in North Carolina in 1903. Orville and Wilbur Wright never went to college, but they were good at building things. On December 17th, 1903, in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, they made history. That was the day their airplane, the Wright Flyer, went 100 feet in the air. The Flyer was a rickety plane by today's standards. Its body was made of cloth stretched over a wooden frame. It had one small engine and 2 propellers. Many thought it would crash during takeoff. But it didn't. The Flyer stayed in the air 12 seconds. A short trip indeed, but this first flight changed history forever. So they were the first people to fly planes. Alright guys, so we did chapter 1 of Who Was Amelia Earhart by Kate Boehm Jerome. I will be back on next Monday with chapter 2, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Thank you. Bye.